The engine is starting up.
For launch. GC. Go. Guidance. Go. Fido. Go. Prop. Go. GNC. Go. Max. Go. Eagle. Go. Ecom.
Go pending final steps. The cabin link check.
3, 2, 1.
Is there anyone here that would like to communicate with us? Can you give us a sign?
Welcome to the Riftnationnetwork, the RNN, putting a slide in your glide and a dip in your hip. Welcome to the mothership, the home of the travelers of the universe. With shows throughout the week, you can find us at Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Everything you could want, everything you can need right here, right now. From the paranormal to the supernatural. From comedy to the spiritual. And now, your featured show. Shall we begin?
It's showtime, folks!
Podcast may contain material that some listeners may find sensitive, offensive, or disturbing. We strive to create respectful and informative content, but topics discussed may include mature themes such as violence, explicit language, or controversial subjects, triggering content including discussions related to mental health, trauma, or other sensitive issues, explicit language. Occasionally, our guests or hosts may use strong language. While we aim to handle these topics with care and empathy, we encourage listeners to exercise discretion. If you find any content distressing, consider skipping or seeking support. Remember that this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. If you need assistance, please consult a qualified expert.
Welcome to the Forgotten Library, where the books whisper, the shadows listen, and the stories refuse to stay quietly on the shelf. I'm your host, Christina Spencer. And each month, we explore one novel together. With 3 one-hour live episodes of immersive, read-aloud chapters. Followed by a live interview with the author who brought the story to life. So find your favorite comfy chair, a soft blanket, and a hot beverage. Light a candle if the darkness scares you. And settle in for story time. Welcome to this week's live episode of Horror, History, and Hauntings Library. Hey guys, let's go for round 3. I tried to do it a second time. The audio was kind of blown out. Went back to the old and trusty Blue Yeti, so because the sound, I don't like distorted sound. So I'm gonna try to do this one last time, and we'll just deal with how it turns out. So we're hoping for the best. If somebody's watching, if you can kind of give me a thumbs up if the audio's good, the background music's not too loud, so I know like we're at good levels before we get started, I'd greatly appreciate it. The book that we're covering again is Eclipse Part 1. It's by Barton. It's beautiful cover art. If it would zoom in there. There we go. And the subtitle, this is Eclipse Part 1, When an Ordinary Man Breaks, a City Meets Its Butcher. And it's a really, really good book. I just want to do it justice and make sure like the audio and everything's good so everybody can enjoy it thoroughly. The back cover says an ordinary life can change in an instant. A violent car crash shatters Mitchell's world. The aftermath unleashes something sinister within him, igniting a dark necessity to kill. Soon Chicago trembles under the shadow of the Black Frost Butcher. Two men are on a collision course, one fueled by compulsion, the other by duty. Only one will walk away. So it's a really good book, and I don't mind reading it again. I really don't. So, uh, before we get started, just a couple housekeeping things. I won't be able to check the chat a lot because I will be reading. So, but if the story breaks like a chapter or something, then I'll go over chat messages. I know we already did this once tonight. I understand it's getting late, but I wanted to make sure the audio is perfect to tell the story. So before we start reading, I want to do the dedication. It says, to my great friend, Brian F. Gotti, you have my eternal gratitude for the lessons in generosity and kindness you have taught me. Your awesome laugh and sense of humor will be sorely missed. While your flame may have been snuffed out prematurely, your positivity impacted many lives around you. The light you brought into the world lives on in our hearts. We love you, brother. And in his notes from the author, he asks that if you would, did you know reviews sell books? If you found Eclipse Part 1 when we're done, exciting and thrilling, would you do me the honor of reviewing it on Amazon? It would be extremely appreciated. I would also like to give a sincere thank you and a nod of appreciation to T.D. Barton for all your copy editing and creative input into the story. You have always been the greatest rock in my foundation. Bradford Ellington for your valuable editing contributions. For his editing services, reach out to Bradford Ellington Author on Instagram. Christy Aldridge for the amazing and terrifying cover art for the series. See her collections of pre-made covers or commission her for an awesome cover like this one. You can get her on Facebook under Christy Hearts Nerds. And that's hearts plural and nerds plural. All right, thank you. And like I said, thank you again for your understanding and patience. Like, I just want this to be perfect. And like I said, it's a passion project of mine, and I want to make sure like the story is not being overpowered by any audio issues. So let's get started with the prologue. We're going to jump right into it. Halloween, October 31st, 2025. Let's put our co-host up. There we go. Let's get him going. Halloween, October 31st, 2025. A brutal windstorm had blown up out of nowhere. The weatherman on the radio stated, "Tonight, a severe thunderstorm has crossed into the valley. Please take shelter immediately." In my personal opinion, folks, in my 15 years of broadcasting here in Chicago, I haven't seen a storm like this suddenly appear and have this much power. I urge everyone off the streets. Take your trick-or-treaters home now. Candy, after all, can be bought at the store. His rant was cut off by abrupt static, and then the station began an oldie, Little Red Riding Hood by Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. Sheila looked in her rearview mirror and spotted Rascal. The red Doberman was nestled among her plastic shopping bags. They contained her last-minute supplies for Braden's Halloween costume: some glue, white cotton, red ribbon spools, and a kit of cream paints. She bent down and tapped her cell phone. It read 4:55 p.m. Damn, she fretted. I only have an hour or so to put this together. Gary's coming for work, so maybe he'll be late picking him up. Even bad wolves can be good, she sang along with the radio. Is that true, boy? She laughed as Rascal only yawned in response. As she crossed the center lane and turned onto I-57, bullets of rain pelted her window. The storm, fresh off Lake Michigan, picked up in its intensity. Crazy, rolling thunderheads billowed and blew overhead. It grew prematurely dark. Her fingers strummed along subconsciously on the steering wheel with the tune. The air inside the car grew humid and stale as she had the Camry's heater turned off. A highly pitched horn pierced her thoughts. Sheila instinctively cranked the wheel to the right as the red pickup zoomed past, narrowly missing her. The driver cursed and waved his fist at her. Sheila had obviously pulled out into his lane. Rascal barked from the back seat, scratching at the window. "Oh, sorry, so sorry," she squealed, but of course the truck had already gone down the highway. Shaking from her reaction and the near collision, she pulled over into the breakdown lane to settle herself. "It's not my fault, right, boy? The storm is clouding everything, and I have no time to delay." Not too close behind her, she spied a set of headlights pulling into the breakdown lane to park. "See, other people are having a hard time too," she said in her defense. Rascal just whined in sympathy. She stretched out her arms and with one hand scratched him behind the ear. She felt ready, shook her whole frame one last time, and merged the car back onto the road. On the freeway, the speed limit was 65, and no one except the elderly drove that limit.
That observation is often true. Older drivers tend to be most cautious.
My Alexa decided to talk. um, on the freeway, the speed limit was 65, but no one except the elderly drove that limit. She nudged her speed closer to 75. There were few other drivers on the road, and the drive was smooth again. The radio began a new tune, sitting on the dock of the bay. She hummed again and began to enjoy the ride. Exit 78 passed by, marking the border to the small burg called Oak Forest. She smiled to herself in relief. Phew, only 3 more exits, then I'll be inside, and maybe I'll have a cup of French roast. How about a cup of strips of maple bacon, Rascal? Wouldn't that make it up to you, drag you out in the red and blue lights splashed all over the interior of the Camry? Her eyes darted to the rear view. A police cruiser was behind her with its lights whirling. Her eyes went to the speedometer. It showed 79. Not too much over. Not normally worth hassling me, she thought. But it's raining pretty hard. With no other cars near her, she had no issues getting the vehicle pulled over to the side. She parked, turned off the car, and leaned over to dig in the glove compartment. "Driver, stop moving. Place your hands on the steering wheel immediately." The booming voice came through the cruiser's speakers. She froze, shocked by the fierce tone of voice. "Driver, stop moving. Sit up and place your hands on the wheel. I'm not going to give you another warning." The voice was masculine, aggressive, and agitated. Okay, she said out loud. Rascal pounced around the Halloween packages and whined again in excitement. She sat still behind the wheel with her hands at the 10 and 2 positions. A long minute went by, and finally a shadowy figure emerged from the cruiser. It was a man all alone, tall with broad shoulders, a hat, and a gray rain poncho. He slowly advanced, checking the license plate, and lit up the back seat with his flashlight. Rascal went berserk until she yelled at him to stop. Come on. You're killing me. I need to finish Braden's costume. For God's sakes, just wrap it up and let's go already." Sheila's thoughts cascaded around and around. He tapped at the window with the butt of his flashlight. She hit the button and rolled it down halfway. Rain splattered her immediately. She looked up, but could only see angular shadows and a faint highlight on his face. Wide nose, far-spaced eyes, and a bushy beard. She noted the fact that his mouth was set in a deep scowl. "Sorry, officer, to make you stand in the rain," she muttered, trying to be charming and get on his good side. "And don't worry about Rascal. He's too old to fight." "Only part of the job. License and registration, please." He ignored her attempt at charm. His voice was devoid of any humor. As she leaned over, she noticed his hand slide to his holster. He rested on top of the gun inside. It remained there as she handed him the paperwork. Without glancing at the papers, he said, "All right, Mrs. Glenn, can you step out?" "Are you serious? Is that really necessary?" He took a large step back from her door, rested his hand again on the leather holster on his belt. "Step out. I don't like to repeat my orders, Mrs. Glenn." Sheila sighed softly, more to herself than a protest. She didn't like his tone and demeanor, but she understood that he wasn't to be pushed. More rain flooded the interior and she got out. Rascal whimpered and then emitted a low growl. The storm itself took advantage of her appearance and increased in fury. He slipped his hand around her forearm and led her to the back of the car with a firm grip. "I'm going to have to pat you down now. Any sharp objects and weapons on you I need to be aware of?" She shook her head as his hands roughly went over her shoulders and then down her sides. He removed her wallet and car keys from her jeans pocket. She wasn't wearing a jacket, so she carried nothing else. "What is this all about exactly?" she cried out over the storm's cacophony. I'm sorry. He seized her left arm and yanked it painfully high between her shoulders. The breath blasted from her lungs as he bent her over the hood. She heard the sound of metal handcuffs clicking shut. Then his heavy body was smothering her against the car. Leaning into her ear, he said, "Your husband Gary says he is sick of you not being there for him and your son. Now you never will be." He lifted off and threw a very heavy punch into her ribs. Then he kicked her hip with his boot to knock her to the ground. As she wheezed and writhed on the wet pavement, he popped open the trunk. Dimly, she heard Rascal furiously barking from the back seat. The officer scooped her into his arms and tossed her like a bag of trash into the trunk. The rain ramped up once again, and all other sounds were drowned out by the pounding flurry. Panic seized her, but she couldn't decide how to act. Her fight-or-flight instincts overwhelmed her, and he kept taking action before she could decide. He was calm, precise, calculated. Oh God, this is routine for him. He's practiced this. He bent down close to her face. He had bright green eyes. One was all bloody from a burst blood vessel. His breath smelled of equal parts scope mint and Buffalo Trace bourbon. Her dad drank it often. "A parting gift from me," he said as he showed her a long, black, plastic zip tie. Sheila shrieked as he secured it around her neck. Her final plea of, "No, don't do this, please," was cut off as he tightened the zip tie. It bit into her skin. Blood bubbled up around it as she clawed at it frantically. Her eyes bulged and her tongue stuck out obscenely. He muttered excitedly to himself, "I'm doing it. I'm getting my first. I'm doing it." Time stood still. Every minute detail became super defined. Every color sharpened, and every sensation electrified and shot throughout his body. To Mitchell, the deed was over in seconds. But to Sheila, it seemed endless before her vision faded, colors bleeding, then going gray, and finally dissolving into infinite black. The whole time the man bounced from one foot to the other, he continued his stream of words. "I'm getting my first. I'm getting my first. Yes, all I planned, precise, so easy." Chapter 1. 10 months earlier, January 14th, 2025, Mitchell stared intently at the words on the bleached white paper. The dark red dot above the letter I was growing. The red pen in his right hand trembled. He was losing himself again. His mind slipped, then dove willingly into the red abyss. His eyes blurred. His head grew heavy, and his thoughts revolved around the small puddle of blood? No, no, not blood. Ink. Red pen ink. His inner voice scolded him. Another voice deep inside insisted, no, it's blood. Or it could be. Hot, thick, gooey, smooth. You could make this happen. You know where you could get all this blood. He imagined it flowing through his hands, a pool of it sloshing and washing up over his torso, flowing over his chest and up to his neck. In his thoughts and in reality, he stuck out his tongue trying to get a taste of that hot liquid with, "Whoa, are you Mr. Mitchells? Are you all right?" a student asked, standing at the corner of his desk. Mitchell shook his head, slamming back into the real world. His fourth period English class at Bogan High School materialized before him. "I'm sorry, what?" The student stared at him. It was 17-year-old Corey James. Punk, always a smartass. His inner voice, his darker half snarled. Mitchell murmured instead, "Mr. James, do you need anything?" Corey sneered. "Do I need something? Man, you look like you were about to make out with that homework paper." "That's enough. If you're done with your work, please place it on the pile and return to your seat. Thank you." He grinned pleasantly at him, his mask as the earnest and generous Mitchell Anson Michaels slipped back into place. Corey scoffed, tossed the paper down, and shuffled over to his cluttered desk in the back of the room. No one else had paid attention to their exchange. The time remaining for their pop quiz was nearly over. Knowing among the school staff and his friends as Gentle Giant Mike, Mitchell stood at 6'4". He weighed 260 pounds and had a thick head of dirty blonde hair. His beard was kept short and trim. He towered over his students and most of the faculty, but his giving nature always won them over. Mentoring and volunteering his time had made him a standout among his peers. Most of his students thought the world of him. Mitchell returned to his work on the assignment he had been grading. His eyes glanced for a brief moment at the splotch of red his pen had caused. The ink had gotten on his finger and thumb as well. He picked up the broken pen and dropped it in the basket at his desk. He shot a glance at the digital clock that hung on the wall behind the class. It was 12:14 p.m. 15 minutes later, the PA alarm signaled the conclusion of fourth period. School was half over for the day. That was good. The mild hangover from some happy hour drinks the night before had eroded his energy and his patience for the day. Brad Keller always convincing him and several of the other teachers that it would be a quick drink. The 29-year-old bachelor always had a charm and a presence about him that made it hard to say no. Mitchell liked and hated Brad Keller if that was possible. The smooth salesman and the history teacher was relentless. He actually envied the skill, as he was sure Keller also had a wild sex life. "Oh, come on, fellas, live a little," he would taunt them. Just like that, and with a snap of his fingers, he would snare them all in. They would hit up old Mallory's Tavern on the way home. Drinks that would lead to an inevitable fast round of poker. "Not tonight, my friend," he whispered to himself as he traveled down the east wing toward the gymnasium. He had several manila folders tucked under one arm, and from his right hand he carried a small silver briefcase. He pushed open the twin metal doors. Inside the gym, the senior-junior speech team waited. 10 anxious students sitting in the first 2 rows of the bleachers. Next weekend, they would arrive in Syracuse, New York. There, they would be presenting in front of an academic board of collegiate professors at the 2025 National Toastmasters Conference. Sorry, guys. Thanks for your patience. He walked to the desk placed before the bleachers. From one of the folders, he produced a small stack of papers. A moment later, he studied one sheet with red ink notations. Let's see. Yes, Matt, we finished with your presentation on Chicago's guardian angel serial killer, correct? Yes, sir, the young man answered. He sat at the far end of the second row. His hair was a mess of long curls that hung low down to his shoulders. A faint line of a mustache crossed his upper lip. Mitchell reviewed his notes once more, then said, It seemed pretty well researched, but I didn't find your final summary fully compelling or plausible. Despite the authorities never capturing him or her, does not automatically mean that they are likely dead or incarcerated. But, Matt began, but his voice cracked. However, he pushed on with his defense. His shoulders slumped with a lack of confidence. Compulsion is a common drive for serial killers. It's a fact that they can't stop. They won't stop unless captured or killed. That might be true, but who can say if the guardian angel simply left Chicago? Mitchell countered. Dark voice in his head whispered, What the hell do you know, shithead? Researching on YouTube is your only skill. The youth's jaw dropped and closed with confusion. I'm only saying that they could have restarted somewhere else. You need to include that in your final speculation for your presentation. Otherwise, I think you are ready. Mitchell tucked the paperwork back in his folder and scanned the small group. Are we ready to begin? He was not given their presentation yet. Danny Codron, a senior and one of the school's cheerleaders, sat between two of her closest friends, Shane and Courtney. She had dark brunette locks that cascaded down past her slight shoulders, a spattering of freckles on her pasty white cheeks, and a mouthful of braces. Her hands slowly went up. Okay, Danny, what is your thesis? I selected the topic, Influential Leaders of American Conflicts. She paused and then looked down at her clasped hands in her lap. She gathered herself up and then continued. I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell. I have to confess, I'm not quite finished. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. What's the issue? He asked, more curious than upset with her. The dark voice in his head spoke up. What are you wasting my time with today? Danny was routinely one of his better students and was expected to compete for class valedictorian. My grandfather actually made the suggestion that I write about Will Keith Kellogg. Wait, who? Are you talking about the owner of the cereal company? The words popped out in surprise. Laughter erupted from the group. Danny's cheeks grew even redder. She kept her head down, partially hiding behind her papers. Mitchell raised his hand to settle the group down. She continued, Well, yes, you see, my grandfather served in World War II, and he said that before Kellogg, the standard breakfast was gruel, grits, or porridge. All of these had various ingredients and had a lot of weight to ship. With the grain cereals that Kellogg made, the Army was able to streamline the breakfasts. It saved on shipping costs, and the troops were constantly fed. It wasn't always the case before, and in other wars, supply shortages were devastating for troops. Anyway, my grandfather thought it would make an interesting person for my speech. Mitchell got up, walked around to the front of the desk, and leaned back against it as he folded his arms over his chest. I see. Let me guess the problem. You are having a hard time finding any information or articles to back that up, right? She nodded glumly. Okay, well, I can extend the deadline for you on this one. I can give you until Tuesday to complete the speech in time for our trip. You won't get time to practice it, though. He paused to see if the group was paying attention. Consider this a valuable lesson for all of you. People will always have personal experiences or ideas to suggest, but as a writer or journalist, you must have a discerning eye on the matter. Dissect it and get to the heart of the idea. Ask yourself if this is an important issue or is this just something I can find enough to write about. As in your case, Danny, it is an interesting idea, but right away it seems very limited in content. You think you can make a compelling speech on the idea of how cereal impacted the troops during the war? Is it big enough to showcase, or are you working due to sentimentality? Is this worth pursuing, or are you writing it for your grandfather? You think I should find a different person to focus on? Too many like her, filling this world up, taking up resources, shitting it all away. Too many stupid sluts. This to endure what? Said the deep voice in his head. I'm going to leave that up to you. If you can make the speech yours and fully articulate the importance of Kellogg's contribution, then do so. If not, you have 4 days, including the weekend, to jump ship. Thank you, sir, she replied gratefully. Worthless sack of shit, the voice in his head said. Stop, Michael scolded himself. These kids are young and naive, but there's potential. As their teacher, I'm responsible for molding and growing that in them. You are only being vile. He shook his head, gathered himself, and slipped an expression of patience and gratitude on his face. You're welcome. I don't want you to feel extra pressure, but this is an important conference class. This will be something that not only will win you scholarships, but you can also detail it on your college applications. Let's knock it out of the park and really stand out this year. 6 periods dragged on mercilessly. Wind kicked out outside, and a splatter of slushy ice and snow flurries pelted the windows along the south wall. An afternoon snowstorm had swept in off Lake Michigan. It was premature for this time of year, but most people in Chicago learned to be ready for anything. The weather was always fickle in the Midwest, especially near the Great Lakes. You would have to take everything home versus staying the extra hours at the school to grade yesterday's homework and the pop quiz. Gina, his fiancée, expected him over tonight for dinner as well. Mitchell wheeled his chair back from the desk and crossed to one of the windows. Snow had already fallen and gathered on the football field and near the parking lot. The skies were cobalt and overcast. A chill draft leaked through the frosty glass. He rolled his shoulders, stepped back, and went to the beige wall phone. Mitchell dialed an extension. Mr. Michaels here. Yes, Mr. Gordon. I think you should consider an early release. The weather outside looks nasty. I imagine in a half hour the roads are going to be very treacherous. His last words were drowned out by the uproar from the excited students. Mitchell waved at them and tried to minimize the noise in the room. All right, very good. Yes? Yes? You have a wonderful night too. He ended the call. A moment later, a sharp ding sound came over the intercom. Students, we will be closing early due to the inclement weather. Please begin to make your way to the buses. Thank you very much. Hell yeah, thanks, Mr. Michaels, one student exclaimed. He was a small kid, lanky, and slightly stooped. Zach Shepard, one of the school's top track stars, spoke up. May I use the cell phone to call my dad so he can come get me early? Others quickly repeated the question, asking to also use their phones. Mitchell nodded. It was against school policy to use phones during school hours, but he saw no harm in allowing it now. School had been dismissed. A PA system bell rang out and made it official. The students filed out, laughing and overall giddy. They might be high school students, but inside they were still kids. As the last of the line proceeded out, the Bogan High School Bears star running back, Corey James, came up to his desk with another paper in hand. Hey, Mr. M, here you go in case you get lonely tonight. Enjoy. He flipped the paper onto his desk, cackling with laughter as he slipped through the door. The paper had a naked woman crudely drawn in red ink. Her legs splayed open obscenely. The word lick here with a black arrow pointing the way were above her. Mitchell swept it up in his hands and crumpled it, his temper beginning to growl. The storm outside also grew in strength and fury, as if feeding off Mitchell's mood. Now blinding flurries of fresh snow pelted the windows incessantly. He took a long sip of his coffee, settled back in his chair, and worked to calm his nerves. Thoughts of holding that boy's intestines in his hands filled his head. Corey was a typical kid. It was nothing abnormal, yet there was something about that mouthy teen that got under his skin. He was expecting to do well in college football program somewhere as a running back. For that reason, he barely made an effort with his assignments and tests. The plain digital clock on the wall displayed 12:45. He had to heed his own advice and start to gather his papers and text into his work duffel bag. A few minutes later, he jogged with his hands up over his head to shield himself from the snow as he opened his gold Ford Thunderbird. He flung his bag in the back seat and waited behind the steering wheel. A few minutes later, he cruised down the I-83, keeping it slow and steady on the slick roadway. He dug out his cell phone. He knew it would be better to call now versus when he reached the woody outskirts of Chicago. Cell towers were not as prevalent, and his reception grew spotty there. Despite the long, everyday drive to and from Bogan, he loved the time of isolation, the freedom it gave him. He would often listen to classical music or even lose himself in an audiobook. But sometimes, when the mood took him, he would allow himself a fantasy. A homicide would bloom in his mind like a black and thorny rose. He would spin the encounter in his mind in every gruesome detail and direction he could. Mitchell and Vile debated every angle. His two sides liked to work out the opportunities, challenges, and obstacles. He conjured every conceivable detail of how he would kill a person in a certain scenario. It was his darkest craving. He buried the needy feeling deep, deep, like his victims in the daydreams. Vile kept appearing with a shovel so they could dig them up again and dance with the corpses. He called his fiancée. The cell phone rang twice, and as expected, she picked up precisely on the third ring. Gina was a stickler for routine. Vile would say frustratingly religious and frigid. Currently, she was a stay-at-home marketing executive for a large downtown law firm. Her hours were long, but at least she didn't have the hassle of commuting. Privileged. "Hey, honey," she greeted him. "How was your day going? Are you still in class?" "No, it had to be called off early." "Wow, really? Why?" Vile interrupted his thoughts, blind, ignorant, and clueless. Mitchell shook his head. She had a kind heart and was very generous, but she would never be regarded as an intellectual. "You haven't noticed the weather?" The squeaking wheels of her computer chair could be heard as she scooted away from her desk. "Oh, yeah, okay," she murmured, obviously looking at the window of her small third-floor apartment. The weather station on the radio reported that we will see a record 4 inches of snow coming in tonight. "You okay if I stay tonight after dinner?" She giggled. "Only you would use the weather as a way to parlay a reason to spend the night in my bed." Vile retorted in his head. "Yeah, extortion's the only way it seems I can get sex from you," he mused bitterly. Mitchell cruised past a beat-up sign that announced it was 33 miles to Romeoville. He'd grab an overnight bag first from his condo and then head to Gina's place in Lockport. Guiding the Ford to the connecting ramp to merge onto I-171, he immediately found the road was caked with at least a half-inch of snow and not yet pecked down much from the other vehicles. It was dicey as his back wheels fishtailed a bit. He eased off the gas and let it coast down to 30 miles an hour. "I don't accept this as a rejection of my inquiry, Miss Dawson. I think you're the one who wants—" His words faded as the road took his focus. Ahead, the tarmac angled up as it crested a small hill. He gave it some speed to help clear the top. However, on the other side of the hill, the road appeared to be clear. It was spared the weather since it wasn't facing the coming wind and storm. He kept the speed of 45 miles an hour when a streak of orange-brown color darted across the base of the hill. It was a large breed of dog. A fucking Afghan? His mind screamed. It was too far away to identify it for sure as it bouldered across to the center of the lane. There it froze and dropped something from its mouth in shock at seeing the car barreling towards it. Shit! Mitchell shouted in surprise. His wheels found no purchase. A hidden, thin sheet of ice covered the freeway. He slid into the other lane and back into his own. The car's momentum carried it around and violently twisting it backwards. He panicked while trying to regain control, yanking the steering wheel on reflex, but the spin-out's direction did not help. Gravel was grounding underneath his tires, and the car jerked downward as he launched from the shoulder. The Ford bounced and careened. Screams and pleas for Mitchell to answer from Gina came from his phone, and that had been thrown and laying neglected in the back seat. Mitchell's hands were torn free from the steering wheel as he was flung over the center console. He crashed hard into the passenger window. His earlobe burst open and blood sprayed the interior with tiny droplets. He screamed in terror as he saw the massive tree trunk looming ahead. Before his world shut off like a television getting unplugged, Mitchell launched forward and cracked the windshield with his head. He bounced back and crumpled into the wheel well. The front right fender took the majority of the incredible impact, but the rest of the car wrapped itself around the base of the tree. There were several lacerations along his cheek, temple, and the top of his skull. Blood poured out, hot, thick, gooey, smooth. A small pool gathered along his neck and shoulder. All right, let's check here. Just making sure there's no messages anywhere. Okay, chapter 2. At first, Mitchell could only see flashing images between periods of darkness. A group of blurry, masked faces rushed in and out, hovering over him. Then a series of bright fluorescent lamps, hung from dirty ceiling tiles, came into view as his body was lifted and carried on a stiff stretcher down a narrow hall. An anguished, feminine voice said his name, but the owner stood too far away to be recognized. He had no sense of time or place. Every waking moment his body ached and throbbed in every painful way imaginable. His head felt as if it were split into 3 by blazing bolts of lightning. Finally, his body would plummet into unconsciousness due to medication or simple exhaustion. Those bouts of darkness were peppered with disjointed dreams. There were nonsensical classes or long-winded lectures he gave to students he didn't even recognize. One dream, he recalled he had been on a long excursion into a human jungle. Suddenly, a horde of tiny humanoid creatures sprang up from clusters of fern plants and chased him down one of the trails. He woke as several claws had found purchase in his shoulders and lower back. Now his eyes took in the sight of the hospital room, which was dim with heavy shadows. It was late at night in the ICU, but he could hear the shuffle of nurses making rounds or discussing medical files. Mitchell's eyelids were heavy, and the pull of sleep tugged at him. Yet the nightmare had sent a jolt of adrenaline. He doubted he would sleep again soon. Complex machines and overhead monitors rang out in disjointed rhythms and electrical buzzing. Lifting his head a few inches off the starched bed sheets gave him a chance to scan his body's condition. His right arm and leg were in a cast, and a thick, padded wrap encased his ribs. At his brow, he felt sweat trickle and run down the back of his neck. Cotton bandages covered the majority of his head. He rested his head back on the stiff pillows behind him. In spite of the injuries and the obvious fact that he was in a hospital, he wasn't alarmed or upset. He slowed his breathing, relaxed his body, and began a mantra to focus his thoughts. While he was aware he was lucky to be alive, he couldn't quite recall how he'd been hurt. So you see, Mitchell, while the cast can come off your wrist and leg roughly 6 weeks from now, the ribs may take more time to heal and recover. Physical therapy will also be necessary to restore your hand movements. The small man droned at the foot of the bed. It's Mitch, he interrupted the doctor in a raised, stern tone. Pardon? My name is Mitch. Please? For all his life, even as a baby, everyone used his formal name and never shortened it. Yet upon waking from this accident, the full name, Mitchell Anson Michaels, did not feel right and rang alien and foreign in his mind. He refused to use this longer version of his name any further. Oh, certainly, sorry, the doctor said, obviously taken aback by the vehemence in his statement. Dr. Vilhallen was East Indian with slick back black hair and a thin, wiry mustache over his lip. Two brown warts on his left side of his chin distracted Mitch. A single stubby hair grew from one. It sickened Mitch and made his stomach churn sourly. Another side effect of the severe accident was apparently a heightened sense for detail. He found his eyes would focus and fixate on minute details, or the faintest of smells grew overwhelming. The sheets of the bed felt coarse and chafed his skin. As I was saying, I have issued orders for your transfer to an acute rehab facility. They'll transport you this evening. You should be healed enough to start the first of 3 surgeries. The depressed fracture that runs along here, he ran a callous finger down Mitch's right temple to indicate it. We will use stapling to secure it and to help speed up the regrowth process. Then, a craniotomy up here on the forehead will be necessary to remove the embedded skull fragments. During that surgery, we'll be assessing if a debridement is needed. Debridements are done to remove damaged or infected brain tissue. Then the final surgery is a bone flap replacement to restore any other shifts or dislocations of the skull plate. Jesus, Doc, he muttered. Am I going to be all right? You are under the best care in Chicago, and I'll be making weekly visits to the rehab to ensure your recovery is going as planned. The surgeries sound scarier than they really are, I promise. The brain damage you suffered can be handled. The movement in your arm and hand will resume by the end of the year. You are young, your body can work miracles. You will see. Mitchell shifted under the sheets. His back ached from the prolonged time in one position. How long do you think I'll need to stay in the hospital? I mean, the rehab facility. Normally, for one skull fracture surgery, you can expect a 12-week recovery period. However, since you suffered the dual cracks adding in that time, you'll need manual movement therapy. It may take you through July or August. That is, of course, provided you don't have any infections or setbacks from the surgeries. Mitch felt his shoulders slump as a huge weight settled upon them. The news hit him hard. His normal dark thoughts had descended into anger and misery. His life, as he knew it, was snubbed short and maybe permanently altered. He was a prisoner to his body and what it demanded now to rebuild and recoup. He heard in his mind, Don't worry, you're free now. We have a lot to plan for in the future. New pleasures like you've never had before. That wispy voice spoke in his mind as if somehow spoken behind him. It had an unusual feeling with it, like an itch you couldn't reach, yet not necessarily uncomfortable. Once you called me vile. I like that. You may address me as vile. I am here now. You are free, and we are unleashed. Mitch grumbled and cursed at the small wooden square sitting before him upon the table. Why? Why does this take so much energy? The square had 4 sets of bore holes filled with large silver bolts and hexagon nuts. The point of the object was for Mitch to unscrew the nuts as fast as he could with his left hand, and Joanne, an obese woman with brown hair going gray, sat across the table from him with a timer. She was nearly as wide as she was tall. Trying to calm him, she said, Do what you can. This is only to see where you are, a starting point to your recovery. You'll see improvement soon, I promise. He scoffed in disbelief, but continued his efforts to coordinate his sleepy fingers. They would not grip the nut properly and kept sliding down and away from the post. Finally, he gained purchase and slowly twisted the nut off the second post. He sighed with a mixture of relief and frustration when he focused on the next bolt. He had been transferred from the ICU to the Summer Meadow Acute Therapy Facility on the edge of Chicago. The long rectangular room was open but cluttered. It contained several tables along the southwest corner, wooden plank tables with blue pads meant for physical therapy exercises, and a white tiled area in front of the bank of windows that contained 3 shelves and 5 racks holding medicine balls and various weights. 3 minutes passed, and he dropped his hands on the table. Sweat glistened across his brow. "I'm done," he stated flatly. The voice in his mind said, "I'd rather waste my energy kicking your bloated body all over this floor than keep fumbling with that stupid exercise." The brain damage was similar to a stroke, they said. It hampered movement with his left arm and hand. His recovery progress had also been limited due to the broken left arm, along with the damage to his shoulder. All of it tested Mitch's willpower and patience. He discovered that since the accident, he had very little of each and was on and he had a short fuse. His negativity and the occasional outburst or fit had garnered him a sour reputation. With the medical staff, they had yet been able to convince him that he'd return to normalcy in the coming months. To him, the state was a new fact of his life. The accident had scarred him, disfigured his body, and left him broken. Inwardly, he mourned with deep regret. He doubted he'd ever be able to kill. "That was pretty good. You got to the 6th," Joanne replied. "It's only been a few days since you arrived. It may be a long road ahead, so you must try to have patience." Suddenly, a blue flashing light came to life overhead near the entrance of their therapy room. "Code Gray, room 207. Repeat, Code Gray, room 207," a female voice declared. Joanne leapt from her metal chair. "I have to assist. Stay here, Mitch, and keep practicing. In 10 minutes, you can switch and do those planking exercises I showed you yesterday, okay?" She rambled with distraction and bolted down the hallway without waiting for his response. The other 2 therapists in the room also left to answer the medical emergency. Mitch pushed the wooden square away from him in disgust and then looked about the room. Only 4 other patients remained absorbed in their exercises. He scooted his chair back and stood. "Yes, that's good. Take it. Take this opportunity. He will be alone," Vile's voice whispered from within the dark confines of his mind, urging him on. The image of the elderly black man popped up. Mr. Coronel, Dwight Edwards Coronel, room 403, 2 rooms north of his own. 2 nights ago, Monday, January 28th, Coronel was brought in. The man had been injured in a fall in his grandson's home. Along with a broken hip, the man suffered from long-term dementia. At 9:33 p.m. every night since his admission, Coronel began an unending tirade of cursing and indecipherable screaming. The medical staff had eventually been forced to sedate him. Quickly, Mitch learned that after 3 or more hours, the drug would wear off and the litany of gibberish would play out all over again. At 5:47 a.m., Mitch demanded earplugs from the staff. He became so irate that he was also threatened with sedation. He stifled his true thoughts as he hated the fuzziness and the mind fog that the drugs would bring. Being medicated will only delay his rehabilitation. Now, as he crept along the hallway towards the stairwell, he grew excited and anxious. His hands became sweaty and his heart raced with excitement. "Can you do it? Are you hungry enough for this, Mitch?" "I am. I am. The old bastard deserves it. He's got it coming," Vile said. Carefully, he poked his head inside the stairwell, scanning the steps leading up to the other floors. They were empty. He snuck through ascended as fast as he could. His window would be short. Joanne and the others would surely be returning, and the nurse on the floor would be at her post. Yes, it has to be now, Vile continued. You know you won't have this chance again. Are you going for the blood? You could rub it on your face, maybe even taste it a little. No, I'll be caught. I can't. I can't. I will just have to be happy with just the act of silencing him. But, Viola objected. Its tone was petulant. If they find me covered in his blood, I'll never be allowed another opportunity. The voice went finally quiet. He poked his head in through the door to his floor, following his same scouting process. The room was dark, cold, and had that antiseptic clinical smell choking the air. A pair of monitors loomed over the bed. Wires and sensors were connected to Dwight's prone form. The man's heavy breathing rasped in and out, churning like an overtaxed engine. He was sedated and sleeping, oblivious to the world around him. Mitch stood only a few feet away. His body was rigid. Sweat trickled from his brow and temples. He repeatedly clenched and unclenched his large fists. Vile tried once more. What do you want to do, Mitch? He's all yours for the taking. He did not respond. He remained frozen from the wicked combination of dark needs versus anxious fear. A wrong move or an overlooked detail could result in an investigation leading directly to him. Mitch was incredibly intelligent and always thorough. In all of his imagined scenarios, he scanned them for every possible angle, every point of view. In his mind, he had all the time in the world to execute his precise plans. But here, in this murky gloom of this man's room, he didn't have time as a luxury. The pressure choked his primal drive, his conflict paralyzing him. Maybe I can get a pillow, he mused. You're fucking kidding, right? You want to puss out with that lame smothering? No. Make an example of him. Make his mutation an affront. Throw it in their face. Vile was seething. What? Mitch gasped. Show them all this is what you'll do when they stand in your way. They can't expect you to accept this bawling lunatic. Rip his face off. Put it on the chair by the door. Squeeze his throat till his eyes pop and then open. Enough! Mitch screamed inside his mind. His hands clamped to the sides of his head. I'm in control here. I decide when and how. You want blood, but I want more than that. I want more than one old tattered man who isn't even awake to scream for me. Vile, you answer me. The words came out in a torrent. His emotions were flooding and drowning out the inner dialogue. He was panting with the effort. Only silence answered him. It was over. This was not going to happen. With a sigh of frustration, he opened the door and quickly retraced his steps. When Joanne returned, she found Mitch sweaty and straining from his effort to maintain the plank position he had trained him to do the day before. She stood over him with her hands balled up on her hips. Bullshit, she cursed. You know you haven't been doing your exercises the whole time I was gone. Wise guy, nice try. He laughed and dropped onto the mat. No, after your torture toy you left me with, I had a coffee and a smoke break. I even snuck in a donut since you were gone so long. They laughed together. Everything worked out. He asked. They laughed together. Everything work out? He asked. Yes, Miss Milana fell from her bed. She broke 3 teeth and tore her cheek pretty bad upon the countertop. Ouch, poor thing, he said. But in his head, the cow needed to be butchered, not pampered. The fact that she's nearly the weight of a goddamn Mini Cooper caused the all hands on deck call. Took 20 minutes for 5 orderlies to help her back into bed. She shrugged. Anyway, we're out of time. Let's get you back to your room in time for lunch, okay? All right, that ends chapter 2. I think we're going to stop here. I do appreciate your patience and understanding. I just want this to be the best show possible, and I want you guys to be able to hear the story well. So I thank you, as usual, for watching. And as always, sweet dreams. Bye bye.